Welcome back. What if the penny sitting quietly in your pocket right now could be worth far more than 1 cent, maybe even hundreds or thousands of dollars? Today, we're diving into a coin that many people overlook, yet collectors quietly search for every day: the 1962D Mint Mark Lincoln Penny. At first glance, the 1962D Lincoln Penny looks completely ordinary. It's small, copper-colored, and carries the familiar face of Abraham Lincoln on the front. Millions of these coins were made, and for decades they circulated through everyday transactions across the United States. But hidden within this massive production are small details, subtle variations, and rare conditions that can turn this simple coin into something surprisingly valuable. To understand why this coin matters, we need to go back to 1962. America was in the middle of a transformative era. The country was experiencing economic growth, technological advancement, and cultural change. Coins like the Lincoln penny were produced in huge quantities to support a growing economy. The Denver Mint, marked by the small d under the date, struck over 1 billion pennies that year. That number might sound like it makes the coin worthless, but in the world of collecting, rarity is not just about how many were made. It's about how many survived in exceptional condition. The design of the 1962D Lincoln penny is simple but iconic. On the front, you'll see the profile of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner. Above his head is the word Liberty, and in front of him is the date, 1962, with the small D mint mark just below it. The phrase "In God We Trust" arches across the top. On the back, the coin features 2 wheat stalks framing the words 1 cent and United States of America. This design is known as the wheat reverse, and it had been used since 1909. The coin itself is made mostly of copper, with a small percentage of tin and zinc. It has a warm, reddish tone when new, but over time it can darken to brown. Collectors often describe these coins by their color: red, red-brown, or brown, and that color can significantly affect value. A bright red coin that looks almost brand new is much more desirable than one that has been heavily worn or discolored. Now here's where things get interesting. While billions of 1962D pennies were minted, very few have survived in perfect or near-perfect condition. Most were used in daily life, tossed into jars, dropped on sidewalks, or worn down through years of circulation. Coins that remain sharp, with full detail and original luster, are much harder to find. There are also certain errors and varieties that collectors look for. These are small mistakes made during the minting process. For example, some 1962D pennies show signs of double dies, where parts of the design appear slightly duplicated. Others may have die cracks, off-center strikes, or unusual surface marks. While not every error adds value, some of these variations can make a coin stand out and become highly collectible. One of the biggest factors that drives value is condition, often graded on a scale from poor to mint state. A typical circulated 1962D penny might only be worth a few cents. But in uncirculated condition, especially with a strong red color, the value can rise significantly. High-grade examples, graded MS65 or higher, have sold for impressive amounts at auctions. In some cases, exceptional specimens have reached into the hundreds or even over $1,000, especially when they combine perfect condition with strong eye appeal. These are coins that look as if they were just struck yesterday, with sharp details and a glowing copper shine. For collectors, finding one of these is like discovering a hidden treasure. Real auction records tell the story best. Coins graded at the very top levels, such as MS66 or MS67, have achieved notable prices because they are so rare in that condition. Even though the coin itself is common, finding one that has survived untouched for decades is incredibly difficult. That's what creates demand. But how do you know if the 1962D penny you have is real or valuable? First, look for the mint mark. It should be a small, clear D located just below the date. The lettering should be sharp and consistent with the rest of the coin. If it looks uneven or oddly placed, it could be damaged or altered. Next, examine the details. On a genuine coin, Lincoln's hair, the lettering, and the wheat stalks on the reverse should be well defined. If the coin is heavily worn, the value will likely be low. But if the details are crisp and the surface has a smooth, original shine, you may have something worth a closer look. Weight and size can also help confirm authenticity. A standard 1962 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams and measure 19 millimeters in diameter. While most counterfeit pennies are rare, it's still important to be cautious, especially when dealing with high-value coins. Another key tip is to avoid cleaning the coin. Many people think cleaning will make a coin more valuable, but in reality, it often does the opposite. Cleaning can damage the surface and remove the natural luster that collectors look for. Even a rare coin can lose much of its value if it has been improperly cleaned. Here's a fun fact that surprises many people. The difference between a penny worth 1 cent and one worth hundreds of dollars can come down to tiny details that are almost invisible to the naked eye. A slight difference in color, a barely noticeable error, or a near-perfect surface can completely change how collectors view the coin. Another interesting detail is that the early 1960s marked the final years of the wheat penny design. Just a few years later, in 1959, the reverse had already changed to the Lincoln Memorial design. Wait, that might make you pause because if you're paying attention, you'll realize something important. By 1962, the wheat design was no longer being used. That means if you ever find a 1962 penny with a wheat reverse, it would be an extraordinary error and potentially worth a fortune. Moments like that are what make coin collecting so exciting. It's not just about the coins you expect to find, but the rare surprises that shouldn't exist at all. Collectors today love the 1962 Lincoln penny for several reasons. It represents a time when American coins were still made primarily of copper, giving them a distinctive look and feel. It's also part of a long-running series that many collectors try to complete, building sets that include every year and mint mark. For beginners, it's an accessible entry point into coin collecting. You can still find these pennies in old collections, jars, or inherited coin boxes. And while most won't be worth much, the possibility of finding a high-grade example or a rare variation keeps the search exciting. For experienced collectors, the challenge is in finding the best possible version of the coin. They look for perfect surfaces, strong color, and sharp details. These top-quality coins are not easy to find, and that scarcity drives their value. There's also a sense of history attached to every coin. This penny may have passed through countless hands over the decades, used in stores, carried in pockets, and eventually set aside. Each one has its own journey, and that adds a layer of meaning beyond its monetary value. As we wrap up, think about this. The next time you come across a handful of old pennies, take a closer look. That small copper coin might not just be spare change. It could be a piece of history, a collector's item, or even a hidden gem waiting to be discovered. The 1962 Lincoln penny reminds us that value isn't always obvious. Sometimes, it's hidden in the smallest details, waiting for someone curious enough to notice. And who knows? The next rare coin could already be in your possession, just waiting to be found. Welcome back. Imagine pulling a simple penny from your pocket, only to discover that this small, ordinary coin might carry a hidden story from one of the most unusual years in American coin history. A year when something strange happened at the U.S. Mint, and millions of coins were released without the marks collectors usually rely on. Today, we're diving into the mystery and value of the 1967 Lincoln penny with no mint mark. At first glance, the 1967 Lincoln penny looks like any other coin you might find in loose change. It features the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. There's nothing flashy about it. No gold shine, no unusual size, no dramatic design. But for collectors and curious minds, this coin represents a fascinating moment in time when the rules of coin production were temporarily changed. To understand why the 1967 penny has no mint mark, we need to go back to the mid-1960s. During this period, the United States was facing a serious coin shortage. People were hoarding coins, especially silver ones, because their metal value was rising. As a result, everyday transactions became difficult because there simply weren't enough coins in circulation. In response, the U.S. government took several steps to fix the problem. One of the most important changes came with the Coinage Act of 1965. This law removed silver from most circulating coins and increased production across all mints. But there was another, less obvious decision that would affect coins like the 1967 penny. To discourage collectors from hoarding new coins, the U.S. Mint made a surprising move. They removed mint marks entirely from coins produced between 1965 and 1967. That means whether a coin was made in Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco, it would not carry the usual identifying lettered SO. When you see a 1967 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, it's not a mistake. It's exactly how it was meant to be made. Every genuine 1967 penny lacks a mint mark, and that alone tells you it belongs to this unique 3-year period in American coin history. Now let's take a closer look at the coin itself. The 1967 Lincoln penny is made primarily of copper. In fact, it contains 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin. This gives it that classic reddish-brown color, especially when it's in good condition. Over time, many of these pennies have darkened or developed a brown tone due to oxidation. On the front of the coin, you'll see the profile of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner. This design was first introduced in 1909 to honor Lincoln's 100th birthday, making it the first U.S. coin to feature a real person. Above Lincoln's head is the word Liberty, and to the right is the date, 1967, on the back. The coin features the Lincoln Memorial, a design introduced in 1959. If you look very closely, you can actually see a tiny image of Lincoln's statue inside the memorial. It's a small detail that many people miss, but it adds a layer of artistry to the coin. Now here's where things get interesting. Even though all 1967 pennies were made without mint marks, not all of them are equal in value. Most circulated 1967 pennies are still worth just 1 cent, or maybe a few cents more depending on condition. But certain versions of this coin can be worth much more, especially to collectors. One of the key factors that affects value is condition. Coins that have never been used in circulation, known as uncirculated coins, can be significantly more valuable. These coins retain their original shine and show little to no wear. A high-grade 1967 penny in mint condition can sell for several dollars, and in some cases even more. Another factor is the presence of errors. During the high-speed production of coins in the 1960s, mistakes were bound to happen. Some 1967 pennies were struck with double dies, where the design appears slightly doubled. Others may have off-center strikes, where the image is not properly aligned on the coin. These error coins are much rarer and can be worth anywhere from tens to hundreds of dollars, depending on the severity and clarity of the error. There have even been reports of specially struck 1967 pennies known as special mint sets, or SMS coins. These were not regular circulation coins but were made with extra care and sold to collectors. SMS coins often have a sharper, more detailed appearance and a satin-like finish. A well-preserved 1967 SMS penny can be worth significantly more than a regular coin from the same year. In terms of real-world value, auction records show that top-quality 1967 pennies can sell for impressive amounts. While most won't make you rich overnight, a near-perfect example graded at the highest levels can reach prices in the hundreds, especially if it has a rare error or exceptional eye appeal. But with value comes the risk of fakes and misunderstandings. One of the most common misconceptions is that a missing mint mark automatically makes a coin rare. In the case of the 1967 penny, this is not true, because all of them were made without mint marks. So if someone tries to sell you a 1967 penny as rare simply because it lacks a mint mark, that's a red flag. To identify a genuine 1967 penny, start by checking the date and overall design. Make sure the details match known examples, including the font of the numbers and the placement of the design elements. Look at the color and weight of the coin as well. A genuine 1967 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams and have the typical copper appearance. If you suspect you have a valuable version, especially one with an error or in excellent condition, it's a good idea to have it evaluated by a professional coin grading service. These experts can confirm authenticity and assign a grade that helps determine its market value. Here's a fun detail that many people don't realize. The decision to remove mint marks from coins in the mid-1960s actually made it harder for collectors to track where their coins came from. It was one of the few times in U.S. history when mint marks were intentionally left off for all coins. By 1968, mint marks were brought back, making the 1965 to 1967 coins a unique group. Another interesting fact is that billions of 1967 pennies were produced. Despite this huge number, finding one in perfect condition today is surprisingly difficult. Most of these coins were heavily used in everyday transactions, meaning high-quality examples are much scarcer than the original mintage might suggest. Collectors today are drawn to the 1967 Lincoln penny not just for its potential value, but for its story. It represents a time when the U.S. Mint had to adapt quickly to economic challenges. It also shows how even small changes, like removing a mint mark, can create lasting interest decades later. There's also a sense of nostalgia attached to these coins. Many people remember seeing them in their childhood or finding them in old jars and collections. Holding a 1967 penny is like holding a small piece of history, a reminder of a different time in America. And perhaps that's the most powerful reason why collectors love this coin. It's not just about money. It's about connection. It's about the thrill of discovering something meaningful in something so small. It's about realizing that even the most ordinary objects can have extraordinary stories behind them, so the next time you come across a 1967 Lincoln penny, don't dismiss it too quickly. Take a closer look. Check its condition. Look for unusual details. Because while most of these coins are common, a few hidden gems are still out there, waiting to be discovered. And who knows? That simple penny in your hand might just be more than spare change. It might be a piece of history with a story worth telling. Welcome back. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a simple penny, and realizing that this tiny copper coin could be worth far more than just 1 cent. What if a coin from 1969, something that looks completely ordinary, is hiding a story that collectors have been chasing for decades? Today, we're diving into the fascinating world of the 1969 D-Mint Mark Lincoln penny, a coin that may not always make headlines, but still carries history, mystery, and surprising value. The 1969 D Lincoln penny is part of the long-running Lincoln cent series, first introduced in 1909 to honor President Abraham Lincoln. By 1969, the design had already become one of the most recognizable coins in American history. On the front, you'll see Lincoln's profile, calm and dignified. On the back, you'll find the Lincoln Memorial, a design that was introduced in 1959 to celebrate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. The D Mint mark on this coin tells us it was produced at the Denver Mint. In 1969, the United States was going through a time of change. The country was in the middle of the space race, social movements were reshaping society, and everyday life was evolving quickly. Yet through all of this, billions of pennies were still being produced, quietly circulating through the hands of millions of Americans. Now, at first glance, the 1969 D penny might seem like nothing special. After all, over 4 billion of these coins were minted. That's a huge number, and it means most of them are still very common today. But here's where things start to get interesting. Even within such a large mintage, there are certain details, conditions, and rare variations that can make specific coins stand out. Let's talk about the coin's physical features. The 1969 D Lincoln penny is made primarily of copper, about 95% copper with a small amount of tin and zinc. It has that classic reddish-brown color when it's in new condition, but over time, many of these coins darken into a deeper brown shade. Collectors often pay close attention to this color, because a bright red example is usually more valuable than a worn, brown one. The front of the coin features the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner. Above his head, you'll see the word Liberty, and to the right, the date 1969 along with the small D Mint mark. On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial stands proudly, and if you look closely, you can even see a tiny representation of Lincoln sitting inside the memorial. But beyond the standard design, what really drives curiosity are the errors and high-grade examples. While the 1969 D penny is not as famous as the rare 1969 Doubled Die penny, it still has its own place in the collector world. Some 1969 D pennies show minor errors such as off-center strikes, die cracks, or weak details caused by worn dies. These small imperfections can make a coin more interesting and sometimes more valuable. Condition plays a huge role here. A heavily circulated 1969 D penny might only be worth a few cents, maybe a little more than its face value. But when you find one in uncirculated condition, especially with a strong red color and sharp details, the value can increase significantly. Collectors are always searching for coins that look as close as possible to how they appeared the day they were minted. There have been auction examples where high-grade 1969 D pennies, graded by professional services, have sold for impressive amounts. While most won't make you rich overnight, top-condition coins can reach into the tens or even hundreds of dollars. That might not sound like millions, but for a coin that started as just 1 cent, it's a remarkable jump in value. So how can you tell if your 1969 D penny is worth something more than pocket change? The first step is to examine the condition. Look at the surface. Is it shiny and red, or dull and worn? Are the details on Lincoln's face sharp, or are they faded? Next, check for any unusual features. Is the design off-center? Are there cracks or raised lines that shouldn't be there? These could indicate an error. Another important step is to use magnification. A simple magnifying glass can reveal details that aren't visible to the naked eye. Pay close attention to the date and mint mark. Make sure the D is clear and not altered. Unfortunately, there are fake coins and altered mint marks out there, so being careful is important. Weight can also help. A genuine 1969 D penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. If your coin feels too light or too heavy, it could be a sign that something isn't right. And if you believe you've found a high-quality or unusual example, having it evaluated by a professional grading service is often the best next step. Now here's something many people don't realize. Even though billions were made, far fewer survive today in top condition. Most 1969 D pennies were used in everyday transactions. They passed through countless hands, got scratched, worn down, and eventually lost their original shine. That's why finding a truly pristine example today is much harder than it seems. There are also some fun and surprising details about this coin. For example, the Lincoln Memorial design on the reverse was one of the first times a real person appeared on both sides of a U.S. coin. If you look closely at the memorial, you can actually see Lincoln sitting inside, meaning he's technically on both sides of the penny. It's a small detail, but one that collectors love to point out. Another interesting fact is how these coins connect to history. A 1969 D penny could have been in circulation during major historical moments, from the Apollo 11 moon landing to important cultural events of the late 1960s. Holding one of these coins is like holding a small piece of that era. Collectors today continue to appreciate the 1969 D Lincoln penny for its accessibility and potential. It's a coin that almost anyone can find, yet it still offers the excitement of discovery. You never know when you might come across a well-preserved example or a unique error that sets your coin apart. For beginners, it's a perfect entry point into coin collecting. It teaches you how to observe details, understand grading, and appreciate the history behind everyday objects. For experienced collectors, it's another challenge, finding that perfect high-grade example that stands out from the rest. And perhaps the most exciting part is this. The next time you go through your spare change, you might overlook a penny without thinking twice. But hidden among those coins could be a 1969 D penny that has survived decades in remarkable condition, quietly waiting to be noticed. So the question is, how many of these coins have passed through your hands without you realizing their potential? And how many are still out there, sitting in jars, drawers, or forgotten collections, waiting for someone to take a closer look? Because sometimes, the smallest and most ordinary things can carry the most unexpected stories. And in the world of coin collecting, even a single penny can turn into a fascinating journey through history, value, and discovery. Welcome back. Imagine finding a single penny in your pocket that could quietly be worth far more than 1 cent. Not because it's made of gold, but because of a tiny detail most people never even notice. Today, we're uncovering the story of the 1970 D Lincoln penny, a coin that looks ordinary at first glance, yet holds secrets that have fascinated collectors for decades. The 1970 D Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin produced at the Denver Mint, which is why you'll see a small D mint mark just below the date. At the time, millions of these coins were struck and released into everyday circulation across the United States. People used them to buy candy, pay for small items, or simply toss them into jars without a second thought. But over time, something interesting happened. Certain versions of this coin began to stand out, and not all 1970 D pennies were created equal. To understand why this coin matters, we have to go back to the late 1960s and early 1970s. The United States was going through a period of economic change, and the demand for coins was increasing rapidly. Vending machines, public transportation, and everyday commerce relied heavily on small change. The U.S. Mint was under pressure to produce large quantities of coins quickly, and that meant working at a fast pace. In that environment, small variations and errors could easily slip through. The Lincoln penny itself had already been in circulation for decades. First introduced in 1909 to honor Abraham Lincoln, it became one of the most recognized coins in American history. By 1970, the design still featured Lincoln's profile on the front, while the reverse showed the Lincoln Memorial, a design that had been introduced in 1959. On the surface, the 1970 penny didn't seem special at all. It was made primarily of copper, giving it that familiar reddish-brown color, and it followed the same basic design as many pennies before it. But the real story lies in the details. One of the most talked about features of the 1970 penny series is something called the small date and large date variety. While this is more commonly discussed with the Philadelphia version of the coin, even the Denver minted coins can show subtle differences in how the date appears. These differences might seem minor, but to collectors, they can mean everything. Another important factor is condition. Most 1970 pennies you'll find today have been used, scratched, or worn down over decades. But if you happen to find one in near-perfect condition, with sharp details and original luster, its value can increase significantly. Collectors are always searching for coins that look as close as possible to the day they were minted. Then there are minting errors, and this is where things get truly exciting. Errors happen when something goes slightly wrong during the coin production process. It could be a misaligned die, a double strike, or unusual marks that shouldn't be there. While not every 1970 penny has an error, the ones that do can become highly sought after. These small imperfections turn an ordinary coin into something unique, almost like a fingerprint that no other coin shares. So why is this penny considered valuable? The answer comes down to rarity, condition, and uniqueness. While millions were made, far fewer have survived in excellent condition. Even fewer have notable errors or standout features. This combination creates demand among collectors, and where there is demand, value often follows. There have been cases where high-grade 1970 pennies have sold for impressive amounts. A well-preserved coin graded at the top levels by professional grading services can reach hundreds or even thousands of dollars at auction. Coins with unusual characteristics or exceptional eye appeal can push those numbers even higher. It's important to understand that not every 1970 penny will be worth a fortune, but the right one, in the right condition, can surprise you. If you're wondering how to tell if your coin is valuable, the first step is to look closely at the date and mint mark. The D should appear just below the year 1970. Check the surface of the coin for any unusual marks, doubling, or irregularities. Pay attention to the sharpness of Lincoln's profile and the details on the Lincoln Memorial. A coin with crisp lines and minimal wear is always more desirable. Color also plays a role. Collectors often describe pennies as red, red-brown, or brown. A bright red coin, which still retains much of its original copper shine, is usually more valuable than one that has darkened over time. This is because copper naturally changes color as it ages and reacts with the environment. Another tip is to avoid cleaning your coin. It might seem like a good idea to make it look shiny, but cleaning can actually reduce its value. Collectors prefer coins in their natural state, even if they show some age. A cleaned coin can lose much of its appeal and authenticity. There are also counterfeit coins in the market, although they are less common for pennies compared to higher value coins. Still, it's important to be cautious. If you believe you have a valuable 1970 penny, consider having it examined by a professional coin grading service. These experts can confirm its authenticity, grade its condition, and provide an estimate of its value. Now here's something many people don't realize. Pennies from this era were made mostly of copper, which itself has intrinsic value. In fact, the metal inside older pennies can sometimes be worth more than 1 cent. This has led to debates over whether it's worth saving pre-1982 pennies, including the 1970 simply for their copper content. Another fun fact is how often these coins are still found today. Despite being over 50 years old, 1970 pennies can still show up in circulation. They might be hiding in your change, sitting in an old jar, or tucked away in a forgotten collection. The idea that something so ordinary could still be out there adds to the excitement. Collectors love this coin not just for its potential value, but for the story it represents. It's a snapshot of a time when the US Mint was producing coins at a rapid pace, when small details could make a big difference, and when everyday objects could quietly become pieces of history. Holding a 1970 penny is like holding a small piece of the past. For many collectors, the thrill comes from the hunt. Searching through rolls of pennies, examining each one carefully, and hoping to find that rare variation or perfectly preserved coin. It's a hobby that combines patience, knowledge, and a bit of luck. And perhaps that's what makes the 1970 Lincoln penny so fascinating. It reminds us that value isn't always obvious. Sometimes, it's hidden in the smallest details, waiting for someone curious enough to notice, so the next time you come across a penny, take a closer look. That tiny D mint mark and the date 1970 might not seem like much at first, but they could be the start of a story you never expected. Because in the world of coin collecting, even the smallest coin can hold a big surprise, and you never know when 1 cent could turn into something far more valuable. Welcome back. What if the small, ordinary penny sitting in your pocket right now could quietly hold a story of American history, hidden errors, and surprising value that most people completely overlook? Today, we're taking a closer look at the 1973 Mint Mark Lincoln penny, a coin that at first glance seems common, but carries details and possibilities that collectors pay serious attention to. The 1973 Lincoln penny was minted in Denver, one of the main United States mint facilities. The D mint mark on the coin tells us exactly where it was produced. This penny features the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front, a design that has been part of American currency since 1909. On the reverse side, you'll see the Lincoln Memorial, a design that was introduced in 1959 and remained in use until 2008. Back in 1973, the United States was going through a period of economic change. Inflation was rising, and the cost of producing coins was becoming more noticeable. Despite this, pennies were still being produced in massive numbers. In fact, the Denver Mint struck over 3 billion Lincoln pennies in 1973. That number might make you think this coin is extremely common, and in many ways it is. But here's where things get interesting. Even among billions of coins, certain pieces stand out because of condition, minting errors, or small variations that most people would never notice. And those are the coins that collectors hunt for. Let's talk about what makes this penny unique. The 1973 Lincoln penny is made primarily of copper, about 95% copper and 5% zinc. This gives the coin its rich, reddish-brown color when it's in good condition. Over time, many of these pennies darken due to oxidation, turning brown or even nearly black. However, coins that have been preserved in their original bright red state are far more desirable. The design itself is simple but iconic. On the front, Abraham Lincoln faces to the right, with the words "In God We Trust" above his head, "Liberty" to the left, and the year 1973, along with the D Mint mark to the right. On the back, the Lincoln Memorial stands proudly with the words "United States of America" and "E Pluribus Unum" above and 1 cent below. But the real excitement comes when we look closer, especially at errors and high-quality specimens. One of the most talked-about features in coins like the 1973 penny is the possibility of minting errors. These errors happen during the production process and can make a coin significantly more valuable. For example, some 1973 pennies have been found with doubled die errors. This means certain letters or numbers appear slightly doubled, almost like a shadow effect. It might be subtle, but collectors know exactly what to look for. Another type of error is off-center strikes, where the design is not perfectly aligned on the coin. These can look unusual and eye-catching, and depending on how dramatic the error is, they can increase the coin's value. There are also cases of die cracks or cuds, where small raised lines or blobs appear due to damage in the minting die. While these might seem like flaws, they are actually prized by collectors because they make the coin unique. Now, let's talk about value because that's what most people are really curious about. In average circulated condition, a 1973 Lincoln penny is usually worth just a few cents. You might find one in your change and it won't seem special at all. But when you move into uncirculated condition, things start to change. A bright red, uncirculated 1973 penny can sell for several dollars. sometimes even more depending on its grade. Grading is a big deal in coin collecting. Coins are rated on a scale from poor condition all the way up to perfect mint state. A coin graded MS65 or higher, especially with full red color, can attract serious interest from collectors. And then there are the rare cases. High-grade examples, especially those graded MS67 or higher by professional grading services, have sold for hundreds of dollars at auction. These coins are extremely well preserved, with sharp details and almost no visible marks. Error coins can go even higher. Depending on the type and visibility of the error, a 1973 D penny with a strong doubled die or a dramatic off-center strike could sell for anywhere from $50 to several $100s. In rare situations, exceptional error coins can exceed that range. So how do you know if you have one of these valuable pennies? First, check the date and mint mark. Look for 1973 and a small D under the year. Next, examine the coin's condition. Is it shiny and red or dark and worn? The better the condition, the higher the potential value. Then, take a closer look at the details. Use a magnifying glass if you can. Look at the letters in Liberty and In God We Trust. Do any of them appear doubled or slightly blurred? Check the numbers in the date as well. Also, look at the edges of the coin's design. Is everything centered, or does it look shifted? Are there any unusual lines, cracks, or raised areas? These could be signs of mint errors. If you think you've found something unusual, it might be worth getting the coin checked by a professional grading service. They can confirm whether it's a genuine error and assign it an official grade, which can significantly impact its value. Here's something surprising. Even though billions of these pennies were made, finding one in perfect condition today is actually quite difficult. Most of them entered circulation and were used for years, picking up scratches, dents, and discoloration along the way. Another interesting fact is that in the early 1970s, the United States Mint was already considering changes to coin composition due to rising metal costs. While the penny didn't officially switch to a copper-plated zinc composition until 1982, the economic pressure was already there in 1973. That makes these copper pennies part of the last era of traditional coin metal. Collectors today love the 1973 D Lincoln penny not because it's the rarest coin ever made, but because it represents opportunity. It's a coin that can still be found in circulation or old collections, yet it holds the potential for hidden value. There's also a sense of nostalgia. For many people, this coin is a reminder of everyday life in the 1970s. Passed through countless hands, bought small items, and quietly became part of history. And for collectors, the thrill comes from the hunt. The idea that a simple penny could turn out to be a high-grade gem or a rare error keeps people searching through rolls of coins, jars of spare change, and old family collections. So the next time you come across a 1973 D Lincoln penny, don't dismiss it too quickly. Take a moment to really look at it. Check the details, examine the condition, and consider the possibility that it might be more than just 1 cent, because in the world of coin collecting, even the most ordinary-looking coin can hold an extraordinary story, waiting for someone curious enough to discover it. And who knows? The next valuable coin might already be in your hands, just waiting to be noticed. Welcome back. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a simple penny, and discovering it might be worth far more than 1 cent. Not because it's made of gold or silver, but because of tiny details most people overlook. Today, we're uncovering the story of a coin that millions have seen, but very few truly understand. The 1979 D Mint Mark Lincoln penny. At first glance, the 1979 D Lincoln penny looks completely ordinary. It's a small, copper-colored coin with the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front. The D Mint mark, located just below the date, tells us it was struck at the Denver Mint. Billions of pennies were made that year, so you might be wondering, how could something so common ever be valuable? To understand that, we need to go back in time. The Lincoln penny itself has been around since 1909, created to honor the 100th birthday of President Abraham Lincoln. By 1979, the design had already become one of the most recognizable in American history. The front of the coin, known as the obverse, features Lincoln's profile, designed by Victor David Brenner. On the back or reverse, you'll find the Lincoln Memorial, a design that had been in use since 1959. The year 1979 wasn't especially dramatic in terms of coin design changes, but it sits in an important era. The United States had already shifted away from solid copper pennies earlier in the decade. By 1979, pennies were made mostly of zinc with a thin copper coating. This change was made to reduce production costs as the price of copper increased. So, even though the coin still looks copper, it's actually a different material inside. Now here's where things start to get interesting. While millions of 1979 D pennies were produced, not all of them are equal. Small variations during the minting process can turn an ordinary coin into something collectors actively search for. These variations are known as errors, and they are one of the main reasons a coin like this can become valuable. Some 1979 D pennies show what collectors call die errors. This can include doubled letters, where parts of the design appear slightly duplicated, or off-center strikes, where the coin wasn't perfectly aligned during minting. There are also coins with weak strikes, meaning the design looks faint in certain areas, or planchet errors, where the metal blank itself had flaws before it was struck. Even more subtle are condition differences. Most pennies you find in circulation are worn down from years of use. But if you come across a 1979 D penny in near-perfect condition, something collectors call mint state, its value can increase significantly. These coins often have sharp details, no scratches, and a bright, original shine. So why does this matter? Because collectors are always searching for the best examples of each coin. When millions are made, the truly perfect ones become rare over time. People spend decades searching through rolls of pennies, hoping to find one that stands out. Let's talk about real value. A typical 1979 D penny in circulated condition is usually worth just 1 cent. But if you find one in excellent condition, especially graded by professional services, it can sell for several dollars. That might not sound exciting at first, but certain high-grade examples have sold for much more. For instance, a 1979 D penny graded at the highest levels with a flawless red surface can sell for over $100 at auction. And coins with rare errors can go even higher, depending on how unique they are. A strong doubled die or a dramatic off-center strike could attract serious attention from collectors willing to pay a premium. This is what makes coin collecting so fascinating. The difference between a 1-cent coin and a $100 collectible can come down to tiny details that most people never notice. But how can you tell if your 1979 D penny is real, or if it has something special about it? First, look at the mint mark. The D should be clear and properly shaped. If it looks unusual, too large, too small, or oddly placed, it might be altered, or it could be a genuine mint error. Next, examine the surface closely. Real coins have a consistent texture. If you see bubbling, unusual coloring, or signs of tampering, it could be damage rather than a true mint error. Using a magnifying glass can help you spot details like doubling in the letters of Liberty or In God We Trust. Weight is another clue. A standard 1979 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams because of its zinc core. If it weighs significantly more or less, that could indicate something unusual. However, always be careful, as environmental damage can also affect weight slightly. Another important tip is to avoid cleaning your coin. Many people think cleaning will make a coin more valuable, but in reality, it often does the opposite. Collectors prefer coins in their original condition, even if they look a bit dull. Now let's explore some fun and surprising details. Did you know that billions of pennies are still sitting in jars, drawers, and old piggy banks across the United States? That means there's always a chance that rare variations are still out there, waiting to be discovered. Another interesting fact is that many collectors focus specifically on certain years like 1979 because they're easier to search in large quantities. You might not find $1 million coin, but finding a high-grade or error coin can still be incredibly rewarding. There's also a certain nostalgia attached to these coins. For many people, pennies like the 1979 D were part of everyday life growing up. They were used in vending machines, saved in jars, or even flattened into souvenirs. Today, they serve as small pieces of history that connect us to the past. Collectors love the 1979 D Lincoln penny not because it's the rarest coin ever made, but because it represents the thrill of the hunt. It's accessible, affordable, and full of potential. Anyone can start looking for one, and that's what makes it special. Unlike expensive gold coins locked away in vaults, this is a coin you might already have. It turns ordinary pocket change into something exciting. Every time you check a penny, you're not just looking at money, you're looking at a story, a moment in history, and maybe even a hidden opportunity. And here's something that surprises many people. The value of coins can change over time. As more collectors enter the hobby and demand increases, coins that were once overlooked can suddenly become more desirable. That means even a simple 1979 D penny could gain more attention in the future, so the next time you see a penny, don't ignore it. Take a closer look. Check the date. Look for that small D mint mark. Examine the details, because hidden in plain sight, there could be something far more valuable than you expect. And that's the real magic of coin collecting. It turns everyday objects into mysteries waiting to be solved. It reminds us that even the smallest things can hold surprising value. As we wrap up, think about this. How many pennies have passed through your hands without a second glance? And how many of them might have had a story worth telling? The 1979 D Lincoln penny may not seem extraordinary at first, but for those who take the time to look closer, it becomes something much more. A piece of history, a collector's treasure, and a reminder that sometimes value is hidden in the smallest details, so keep your eyes open, check your change, and who knows? The next penny you find might not just be a penny at all. Welcome back. Imagine reaching into your pocket and pulling out a simple penny, only to discover it might be worth far more than 1 cent. What if a coin from 1984, something millions of people once ignored, could actually hold hidden value and a story that most people never notice? Today, we're diving into the 1984 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, a coin that looks completely ordinary at first glance, but carries history, mystery, and surprising potential. The 1984 Lincoln penny is part of one of the most recognizable coin series in American history. The Lincoln cent was first introduced in 1909 to honor President Abraham Lincoln, and it quickly became a symbol of everyday American life. By 1984, this coin had already been in circulation for 75 years, passing through countless hands, pockets, and cash registers across the country. Now, when we talk about a 1984 penny with no mint mark, we're referring to coins produced at the Philadelphia Mint. At that time, coins from Philadelphia often did not carry a mint mark, which can confuse many new collectors. They might think the missing mark means something is wrong or rare, but in reality, it simply tells us where the coin was made at. In 1984, the United States was well into the era of modern coin production. Just 2 years earlier, in 1982, the composition of the Lincoln penny had changed from mostly copper to a zinc core with a thin copper coating. So the 1984 penny you might find today is actually made of about 97.5% zinc and only 2.5% copper. This change was made to reduce production costs, as the price of copper had risen significantly. When you hold a 1984 penny, you're holding a lightweight coin compared to older pennies. It weighs about 2.5 grams, and if you drop it, it makes a slightly different sound than the heavier copper coins from before 1982. These small details might seem insignificant, but they help tell the story of how the economy and material costs influenced even the smallest denomination of currency. On the front of the coin, you'll see the familiar profile of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner. His initials, VDB, are subtly placed on the coin, a detail that collectors always look for. Above Lincoln's head is the word Liberty, and to the right is the date, 1984. Since this is a no mint mark coin, there will be no letter under the date. On the reverse side, you'll find the Lincoln Memorial, a design that was used from 1959 until 2008. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny image of Lincoln seated inside the memorial. It's a detail so small that many people never notice it, even after handling hundreds of pennies. Now here's where things get interesting. While most 1984 no mint mark pennies are very common, certain variations and errors can make some of them much more valuable than their face value. One of the most famous errors associated with the 1984 penny is the doubled ear variety. This happens when there is a slight misalignment during the minting process, causing Lincoln's ear to appear doubled. To the naked eye, it might look like a shadow or an extra outline, but to collectors, it's a highly desirable feature. Coins with this doubled ear error have sold for significantly higher prices than regular pennies. Depending on the condition, some have been sold for tens, even hundreds of dollars. In rare, high-grade conditions, especially those that are uncirculated and well-preserved, the value can climb even higher. Condition plays a huge role in determining value. A worn 1984 penny that has been in circulation for decades might only be worth 1 cent. But a coin that has been carefully preserved, with sharp details and a bright surface, could be worth much more to a collector. There have been auction examples where high-quality 1984 pennies, particularly error coins, have sold for impressive amounts. While it's rare to see one reach extremely high prices, the excitement comes from the possibility. The idea that a small, everyday coin could be worth far more than expected is what keeps collectors searching. So how can you tell if your 1984 penny is something special? First, check the date and confirm there is no mint mark under it. That tells you it was made in Philadelphia. Next, take a close look at Lincoln's ear. You may need a magnifying glass or even your phone camera to zoom in. If you notice a clear doubling effect, you might have the doubled ear variety. Also, examine the overall condition of the coin. Look at the sharpness of Lincoln's hair, the clarity of the lettering, and the condition of the Lincoln Memorial on the back. Coins with minimal scratches, strong details, and a bright appearance are more valuable. Be cautious. Though, there are many coins that might appear unusual due to damage or wear, but they are not true mint errors. Scratches, dents, or corrosion can sometimes mimic the look of doubling, so it's important to compare your coin carefully or even seek expert evaluation if you think you have something rare. Another way to identify authenticity is by weight. A genuine 1984 penny should weigh around 2.5 grams. If it's significantly heavier or lighter, it could indicate something unusual, although most variations still fall close to that standard. Here's a fun fact that many people don't realize. Even though billions of pennies were produced in 1984, only a small fraction of them have noticeable errors. That means the odds of finding a valuable one are low, but not impossible. And that's exactly what makes coin collecting so exciting. Another surprising detail is how often valuable coins go unnoticed. People spend them without thinking, drop them into jars, or leave them sitting in drawers for years. Somewhere out there, a rare 1984 penny could still be hiding in plain sight, waiting to be discovered. Collectors love coins like the 1984 no mint mark penny because they combine accessibility with potential. You don't need to spend thousands of dollars to start searching. You can begin with the change in your pocket. And every coin you examine feels like a small treasure hunt. There's also a deeper connection to history. Each penny represents a moment in time. The year 1984 was a period of economic change, technological growth, and cultural shifts in the United States. Holding that coin is like holding a small piece of that era. For many collectors, it's not just about the money. It's about the thrill of discovery, the appreciation of detail, and the satisfaction of finding something rare where others see nothing special. And that brings us back to the question we started with. Could a simple penny from 1984 be worth more than 1 cent? The answer is yes, but only if you know what to look for. Most of these coins are common, but a few stand out because of their condition or unique errors. And those are the ones that collectors are willing to pay for. So the next time you come across a penny, don't ignore it. Take a closer look. Check the date. Look for a mint mark. Examine the details, because hidden among ordinary coins, there could be something extraordinary. And who knows, the next valuable coin might already be in your hands, just waiting for you to notice it. Welcome back. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a simple penny, and realizing it might be worth far more than 1 cent. It sounds unbelievable, but for some collectors, the right coin can turn everyday change into real money. Today, we're diving into the story of the 1985 D mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin that most people overlook, but one that quietly holds history, mystery, and in some cases, surprising value. The 1985 D Lincoln penny is part of the long-running Lincoln cent series, one of the most recognizable coins in American history. First introduced in 1909 to honor President Abraham Lincoln, this series has seen many changes over the decades. By 1985, the coin had already gone through a major transformation. Just a few years earlier, in 1982, the United States Mint changed the composition of the penny due to rising copper prices. This shift would directly affect coins like the 1985 D, making them part of a new era in coin production. The D mint mark on this penny tells us it was produced at the Denver Mint. In 1985, the Denver Mint struck billions of pennies to meet the demands of everyday commerce. At first glance, that might make this coin seem extremely common. And in many ways, it is. But as with many coins, the real story isn't about how many were made. It's about the details, the variations, and the rare mistakes that slipped through the system. Let's take a closer look at what makes this coin unique. The 1985 D Lincoln penny is primarily made of zinc, with a thin copper coating. This gives it the same familiar reddish-brown color, but inside, it's very different from older pennies that were made mostly of solid copper. On the front, or obverse, you'll see the profile of Abraham Lincoln, facing right. Above his head is the word Liberty, and to the right is the date, 1985. Just below the date, you'll find the small D mint mark. On the reverse side, you'll see the Lincoln Memorial, a design that was used from 1959 to 2008. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny image of Lincoln sitting inside the memorial, a detail that many people never notice. The words United States of America curve along the top, with E pluribus unum above the memorial and 1 cent at the bottom. Now here's where things get interesting. While millions of these coins were made, not all of them came out perfectly. In fact, some of the most valuable 1985 D pennies are those with minting errors. These errors can happen when the coin is struck, when the metal is prepared, or even when the dies themselves are flawed. One of the most talked about errors for this year is the double die error. This happens when the design on the coin appears slightly duplicated, usually visible in the lettering or numbers. On a 1985 D penny, you might notice doubling in the word Liberty or in the date. While many double dies are subtle, strong examples can be very valuable to collectors. Another type of error to look for is off-center strikes. This is when the coin design is not properly aligned, leaving part of the coin blank. The more off-center the strike, the more unusual the coin becomes. Some of these can sell for significantly more than face value, especially if the date and mint mark are still visible. There are also die cracks and cuds, which are small raised lines or blobs on the surface of the coin. These happen when the die used to strike the coin starts to wear out or crack. While these might look like imperfections, collectors often see them as unique features that make a coin stand out. You might be wondering, with so many coins produced, how can any 1985 D penny be valuable? The answer lies in condition and rarity within that condition. Most of these pennies have been heavily circulated. They've passed through countless hands, vending machines, and cash registers. As a result, finding one in perfect or near-perfect condition is actually quite rare. Coins that have never been circulated, known as uncirculated coins, can be worth more, especially if they have strong details and a bright, original shine. Professional grading services assign these coins a grade, often on a scale from 1 to 70. A high-grade 1985 D penny, especially one graded MS-65 or higher, can sell for several dollars, sometimes even more depending on its quality. But the real excitement comes from error coins. Some collectors have paid hundreds of dollars for rare error versions of the 1985 D penny. For example, a strong double die or a dramatic off-center strike can turn an ordinary coin into a sought-after collectible. While these are not common, they do exist, and they continue to be discovered even today. There have been auction listings where high-grade examples or error coins from 1985 D have sold for impressive amounts compared to their original value. While most will never reach life-changing sums, the possibility is enough to keep collectors searching through rolls of pennies, hoping to find that one special piece. So how can you tell if you have a valuable 1985 D penny? First, check the date and mint mark carefully. Make sure the D is present and clearly visible. Next, examine the coin under good lighting. Look for any unusual features, such as doubling in the letters, misalignment in the design, or odd marks that seem raised rather than scratched. It's also important to weigh the coin if you can. Since 1985 pennies are made of zinc, they should weigh about 2.5 grams. If you find one that weighs significantly more, it could be something unusual, possibly even a rare transitional error, though those are extremely rare. Another key factor is condition. Try to avoid cleaning the coin even if it looks dirty. Cleaning can actually reduce its value, as collectors prefer coins in their natural state. If you believe you have a high-quality or rare coin, it may be worth having it professionally evaluated. Here's a fun detail that many people don't realize. Because the copper layer on these pennies is so thin, it can sometimes wear off or even bubble if the zinc underneath reacts with moisture. This can create interesting textures on the surface of the coin. While most of these are considered damage, some unusual patterns have caught the attention of collectors. Another surprising fact is how many of these coins are still out there. Unlike older, rarer coins, the 1985 D penny can still be found in circulation today. That means anyone, anywhere, could stumble upon one without even trying. It's like a small treasure hunt hidden in everyday life. Collectors love the 1985 D penny not because it's the rarest coin ever made, but because it represents opportunity. It's a reminder that even the most common objects can hold hidden value. For new collectors, it's an accessible entry point into the world of coin collecting. For experienced collectors, it's another chance to discover something unusual. There's also a certain nostalgia attached to these coins. For many people, pennies like this were part of their childhood. They were used in candy machines, saved in jars, or collected in small albums. Today, those same coins are being rediscovered with a new sense of appreciation. In the end, the 1985 D Lincoln penny is more than just a piece of currency. It's a small piece of history, a product of its time, and for some, a hidden gem waiting to be found. It teaches us to look closer, to pay attention to the details, and to never underestimate the value of something simply because it seems ordinary. So the next time you come across a penny, don't ignore it. Take a moment to look at the date, the mint mark, and the details, because you never know. That tiny coin in your hand might just have a story worth far more than 1 cent. Welcome back. What if I told you that a simple penny from 1986, the kind most people ignore or spend without thinking, could quietly hold more value than you ever imagined? It may not look special at first glance, but this small copper-colored coin has a story that might change the way you see every penny in your pocket. Today, we're talking about the 1986 Lincoln penny with no mint mark. At first, that might sound confusing. No mint mark? Isn't that a mistake? Or could it actually mean something important? The truth is, this tiny detail has sparked curiosity among collectors for decades, and understanding it could help you spot something valuable hiding in plain sight. Let's start with the basics. The 1986 Lincoln penny is part of the long-running Lincoln cent series, first introduced in 1909 to honor President Abraham Lincoln. By 1986, this coin had already become one of the most recognizable pieces of currency in the United States. Millions of these pennies were produced, and most of them are still circulating today. Now here's where things get interesting. When a coin has no mint mark, many people assume it's rare or unusual. But for the 1986 penny, no mint mark actually means it was produced at the Philadelphia Mint. During that time, Philadelphia coins often didn't carry a mint mark, unlike coins from Denver, which use a D, or San Francisco, which uses an S. So technically, a 1986 penny with no mint mark is completely normal. In fact, hundreds of millions of them were made. But that doesn't mean all of them are ordinary, because within these millions of coins, there are subtle differences, rare conditions, and even small errors that can turn an everyday penny into something collectors are willing to pay real money. Let's take a closer look at the coin itself. The 1986 Lincoln penny is made primarily of zinc, with a thin copper coating. This composition was introduced in 1982, when rising copper prices forced the U.S. Mint to change the metal content of pennies. So even though it looks like a traditional copper coin, it's actually mostly zinc underneath. On the front, or obverse, you'll see the familiar profile of Abraham Lincoln, facing right. Above his head is the word Liberty, and to the right is the year, 1986. If there's no mint mark below the date, that tells you it came from Philadelphia. The phrase "In God We Trust" appears along the top edge on the back. You'll find the Lincoln Memorial design, which was used from 1959 until 2008. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny image of Lincoln sitting inside the memorial. It's one of those small details that many people miss, but collectors love to point out. Now you might be wondering, if so many of these coins were made, why would anyone consider them valuable? The answer comes down to condition, rarity within the group, and errors. Most 1986 no-mint mark pennies are worth only face value. But if you find one in exceptional condition, something collectors call mint state, the value can increase significantly. These are coins that have never been circulated, meaning they show no signs of wear. Their surfaces are clean, their details are sharp, and they often have a bright, original shine.in higher grades, especially those certified by professional grading services. A 1986 no-mint mark penny can sell for several dollars, sometimes even more depending on the exact condition. It may not sound like a fortune, but remember, this is a coin that originally cost just 1 cent, but the real excitement comes from errors. Coin errors happen during the minting process, and they can make a coin unique. For the 1986 penny, collectors look for things like off-center strikes, double die errors, or coins with unusual surface defects. A double die error, for example, occurs when the design is accidentally stamped more than once, slightly misaligned. This can create a noticeable doubling effect on letters or numbers. While not extremely common, if you find a 1986 penny with clear doubling, it could be worth significantly more than a normal one. Another type of error is a die crack or cud, where part of the die used to strike the coin becomes damaged. This can leave raised lines or blobs of metal on the coin's surface. Again, these errors are rare, but they are highly collectible. There have even been cases where collectors discovered 1986 pennies with unusual color variations or plating issues. Since these coins are copper-plated zinc, the outer layer can sometimes wear or bubble, revealing the silver-colored zinc underneath. While some of these are simply damage, others may have occurred during production and can attract interest. Let's talk about real value examples. In average circulated condition, a 1986 no-mint mark penny is worth 1 cent. But in uncirculated condition, it might sell for a few cents to a few dollars. High-grade examples, especially those graded MS65 or higher, can reach prices of $10 or more. If you add a noticeable error into the mix, the value can jump even higher. Some error coins from this era have sold for $20, $50, or even over $100 depending on the rarity and visual appeal of the mistake. It all comes down to how unique the coin is and how much a collector is willing to pay. Now, how do you tell if your 1986 penny is real or valuable? First, check the date and look for the absence of a mint mark. Then examine the coin under good lighting. Look for sharp details, clean surfaces, and any unusual features. A magnifying glass can help you spot small errors that aren't visible to the naked eye. Weight can also be a clue. A standard 1986 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams because of its zinc composition. If it's significantly heavier or lighter, it might be altered or damaged. While counterfeiting pennies isn't very common, it's always good to be cautious. If you believe you've found something special, consider having it evaluated by a professional coin grading service. They can confirm its authenticity, assign a grade, and give you a better idea of its market value. Here's a fun fact that surprises many people. Even though the 1986 penny is relatively modern, it represents a time when the US Mint was still adjusting to major changes in coin production. The switch to zinc in the early 1980s was a big shift, and coins from this period sometimes show the growing pains of that transition. Another interesting detail is how many of these coins are still out there. Unlike older rare coins that have been lost or melted down, 1986 pennies are still easy to find. That means anyone, anywhere, could stumble upon a valuable example just by checking their spare change. Collectors love this coin not because it's extremely rare, but because it's accessible. It's a reminder that coin collecting doesn't always require expensive investments. Sometimes it starts with a simple habit of paying attention. There's also a sense of nostalgia. For many people, coins from the 1980s feel familiar. They might remember using them as kids or seeing them in everyday transactions. That emotional connection adds another layer of appeal. And then there's the thrill of the hunt. The idea that among millions of ordinary coins, a few hidden gems exist is what keeps collectors searching. It turns something as simple as a penny into a small treasure waiting to be discovered. So the next time you come across a 1986 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, don't dismiss it too quickly. Take a closer look. Check the details. Ask yourself if there's something unusual about it. Because even though most of these coins are common, a few of them hold stories, errors, and value that go far beyond their face value. And that's the beauty of coin collecting. It's not just about money. It's about history, curiosity, and the excitement of finding something unexpected. Who knows? The next penny you pick up could be worth more than you think.